You know, I've been meaning to do this for a couple of weeks and just haven't gotten around to it yet. I guess that's the demands of work and then taking 6 classes for school. Like, a lot on the plate right now. So, wanted to get this in, though, because it's overdue. Time for an updated 2022 NFL mock draft. I think this is like version 3. We're going to fucking go with that. This is a post-week 6 of the NFL edition, so... now you're starting to see a little bit of how the draft board could potentially shape up in terms of the NFL. Now, granted, there's still a lot of time to go and a lot of movement that can happen, as there certainly will be when it comes to the individual prospects. So let me start off like I typically do with mock drafts that come this early in the process. Number 1, no, I have not done in-depth analysis on all these prospects. I've watched them at varying and different levels. Some of it is a little more in-depth than others. But do not take what I'm saying as a final statement of anything that I believe or anything that I absolutely say is going to happen or what I think about a player or don't think about a player. When you want to know what I think about somebody as a prospect, I'll tell you when I'm ready to, and I'm not ready to yet. So keep that in mind. Number 2, I don't give a fuck where your team's falling in the mock draft order. It's just being done off of rankings and records and strength of schedule, all that other bullshit. Just who gives a shit? I know some of you will not actually listen to this video. You just click and look at the description box and then not pay attention to what I'm actually saying. But I would hope that everybody would. So, knowing that this would look vastly different a few months from now, and that's not the point here. The point is just to start it off, get some conversation going. Let's talk about this mock draft. It's a one-round edition. I've dropped picks 1 through 32 in the description box below, where you're certainly free to peruse all of them and give me your thoughts and opines on them. But as I look at this mock draft, like, it always starts with the quarterback position. Let's not get it twisted. When you have great quarterbacks at the top, it helps set the rest of the draft in order. When you're in a draft where potentially the quarterbacks aren't worth the 1st or 2nd or 3rd overall pick or anything like that, that can be a reflection of a bad draft class. Not always, but it can be. And when I look at this quarterback class, I think this ties back to, if you remember, some of these quarterbacks that I watched a couple of months ago and I did some early scouting reports on. If you guys remember, there were a couple of guys that I liked, but there was nobody that was just like so awe-inspiring or like I am officially a nut hugger of theirs or I'm a stand for them. There was nobody like that. In fact, I saw a lot of guys that could go one way or the other, and I saw a lot of guys with major flaws in their game that I wasn't ready to proclaim anybody as an absolute can't-miss prospect. And I don't think this class has one right now, and I don't know if they're going to have one. So it's going to beg the question for, let's say, a team like Detroit or a team like Houston, maybe a Philadelphia at the top, depending on how the rest of Jalen Hurts this season goes. Are you going to be in a position where you can legitimately draft a quarterback that could change your franchise? Or are you going to be in a position where you feel like you have to reach to draft a quarterback to try and change your franchise? Much different conversation there. Now, there are certainly going to be plenty of proponents, plenty of arguers for, let's say, if Detroit ended up with the number 1 overall pick. Well, the quarterback class is not that great, so you take Thibodeaux and you get that stud on your defense. No, you don't. If it's even close, you take the quarterback. You can find edge rushers. Detroit needs a damn quarterback, especially since they just traded away Stafford. I don't give a fuck about Jared Goff and his contract. They need a quarterback. And if one is close, like if they feel a Carson strong, like if they look at their draft board and they see that Thibodeaux or maybe an Neal, 1 or 2 other guys, maybe a Kyle Hamilton, they look at some of those guys and they say these are truly elite, like Pro Bowl, All-Pro level talents, but right below them is a Malik Willis or a Carson Strong, then who do you take? You take the quarterback and build around them, especially if they have great physical tools. Maybe even if they don't. So I took an approach with this mock draft that I was assuming that some quarterbacks will be drafted high, even if you don't necessarily believe right now that these quarterbacks merit being taken high. And I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm not saying that I disagree with that. I'm just doing a scenario here. So I got the Detroit Lions taking Carson Strong out of Nevada with the number 1 overall pick. You know, he was a guy that watching him with his season last year, like I grew to like his game. I was impressed by him. He had some concerns, but I had concerns about all these guys. But I certainly saw some upside there. And, you know, I look at him and I say, you know, they envision him, dome team, Matt Ryan type of career. You could certainly do worse. You could certainly do worse. Whereas you look at Houston and you say, okay, they want a dynamic option to potentially make people forget about Deshaun Watson. Davis Mills sure as fuck ain't going to be dynamic, so maybe Malik Willis will be. I think he's the most dynamic quarterback in this draft. You know, I always question somebody wanting to go to school at Falwell U Liberty, but nonetheless, we all make our bad decisions, and believe me, I make as many bad ones over the years as anyone. But Malik Willis, you know, this is a guy with incredible arm, great athleticism. You know, he's continuing to grow as a prospect. I think he's a guy that, as you go through the draft process, would potentially start to rise up boards to where teams would feel a little bit more comfortable about taking a guy like him towards the top, especially with some of those elite physical tools. Probably not there yet, but certainly could be. Now, if you're the Eagles and you look at this, and maybe you're not an Eagles fan that's the most sold on Jalen Hurts, or maybe you're okay with him for now. If you got Thibodeaux to fall to you at 3, you got to be doing backflips and take him. Like, he is an impact defensive player. You know, some are going to argue the best player in this draft. I'm not in a position to make that statement or not make that statement one way or another. Although usually when it comes to these players, especially it seems like on the defensive side that are viewed as the consensus top prospect, I always come out with somebody else different. But if the Eagles right now as it stands were to get him at the 3rd overall pick, you got to feel really, really good about things. And then Jacksonville at 4, it is you run up there and you take Evan Neal and say, fuck it. You need to protect Trevor Lawrence. This draft is about Trevor Lawrence. You have to help Trevor Lawrence. Let me repeat, you have to build around Trevor Lawrence. I don't give a fuck if you look at this draft and you say, man, there's a lot of good value and a lot of good talent on defense. I agree right now this draft, certainly at the top, is better on the defensive side of the ball than it is the offensive side of the ball, which for some teams is going to work out splendidly, and for other teams is going to be a problem. Like, you look at the Giants at pick 5. I've got them taking Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. Too bad he can't play fucking quarterback. Would they take another offensive lineman here in the top 5? You're going to take a receiver here? You're going to potentially reach on a quarterback? Like, the options are not great for a team like the Giants in this spot. Same thing with a team like the Jets. Now, certainly they have needs across the board, and they could certainly use an infusion of talent on this defense. And when you look at the 2 first-round picks that I have them taking, with Leal from Texas A&M at 6, and then to taking a gamble on Stingley Jr. from LSU at 10. I say gamble because while the talent is elite, so is the elite ability to get his ass fucking injured. You know, those picks, while you just took Zach Wilson and you want to build around him and you want to put him in the best possible situation to succeed, sometimes the talent does have to win out. Although, if I was a Jets fan, I would be incredibly mortified by seeing this mock draft, even if I like one or both of the prospects that have been slated here, just because I'm saying, oh, it's another year that the drafts would invest multiple first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball. I wonder how that fucking worked out in the past. So I totally and completely get it. But in terms of the other quarterbacks, I did have 2 others going around. One, I've got Matt Corral from Ole Miss going 9 to Washington. I'm sorry, Washington fans. You goddamn know good and well Taylor Heinicke may be fun. Taylor Heinicke is solid. Do you really want to stake your chances to potentially win a Super Bowl someday on Taylor Heinicke? That's what I thought. So if you can find a guy that's more dynamic, more athletic upside, you do that. They can't only but kick this can down the road for so long. And then Denver at 14, Desmond Ridder, to me, would make a ton of sense. Veteran presence, guy with a lot of game experience, played at a decent to high level. And you can come in and step in and start right away in Denver. That way you feel no pressure to go back to Drew Lock. Like, I would like that for them. That would make some sense. Like I said, though, this mock draft, as I kind of pieced it together and was looking at it, I'm like, you know, the talent here on defense is pretty good. The talent in terms of edge rushers is top-notch. It absolutely is. I think you also look at this corner class. It is deep and it is loaded. Like, you know, who knows what's going to happen with Stingley always getting hurt and shit. Like, how much could he potentially fall? And could somebody get a real potential steal with him? But the defensive back class is good, but the corner class is outstanding, which means that you're going to be able to get some talent in rounds 2 and 3 for some guys that should have been taken, frankly, in round number 1. So it all comes down to that quarterback class, though. And you guys tell me based off of who you've seen right now. Now, one thing I will say that I feel a little bit better about is I saw people pumping up like Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell and Slovis and all these other guys, and I'm like, well, I don't fucking see it, especially like Slovis. JT Daniels and so forth. Like, I don't see anybody's really pumping any of those guys up. But in terms of some of these other guys that I did call out for this mock draft, is there somebody that I'm missing? Is there somebody that I should be taking a closer look at right now? Is there somebody that you're really standing for? Is there somebody that you're really high on? Or if you were a team like a Detroit or a Houston or Philadelphia at the top of this draft, would you stay away from all of these quarterbacks because you don't love any of them? I'm just kind of curious. I know we're still incredibly early in the process, and a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts can change in the months to come, so I'm not just trying to sit there and get somebody and be like, ha-ha, I told you, you were wrong. Just trying to understand where everybody's at right now because I'm kind of torn, admittedly.